On this episode of Low Buck Garage, I fix things, I build things, I grill things, an eclipse happens, and then this happens. When I hauled the race Jeep to Tucson for the duct tape drags, we had some problems. The biggest one was the generator. This is the voltage regulator. It's wore a hole in its capacitor here. My dad's the one that installed this generator, and I know when he did, he put it on a mechanism that would make it slide out. You just take a handle, put it in this screw, and just unscrew it. The problem is, I broke it. There's the screw. Down there is the part that's supposed to drive it. So I gotta fix this and get this generator out of here. It's almost as though the 20 years this bus was sitting in New England made everything rust up. Kind of weird how that works. I've been soaking in penetrating oil for a few days. Still doesn't really want to move well. We'll get it working. I almost got it out here. There we are. And there's the broken end. These are the pieces of the screw that drives that whole generator mount. There's a bolt going across, and there is the old piece of shaft. And I snapped off this shaft right where the bolt was drilled through it. Now looking at this, all the rotational force is done by this handle and turns this screw. This end here on this shaft doesn't really need to drive a whole lot of rotation. It just does a straight pushing and pulling motion. So I'm going to redesign that joint a little bit to make it mostly push and pull and very little resistance to rotating. Now these drive screws are a special thread. They're a different shape than the regular threads you use in nuts and bolts, and they're meant for power transmission. So as you turn it, the nut drives along and you can actually push something. I bought a nut that should be the right thread. I'm going to thread it on and use this nut to actually do the pushing and pulling. Problem is, it doesn't fit. I'm going to have to figure out what's wrong, but I can't thread that on. First, I made sure there are no burrs on the end and chamfered the end a bit. This nut still doesn't thread on. I'm measuring the minor diameter here, and I'm getting about 490, almost a ½ inch. That's about 460, so that inside is too small. Now it's going on, but it's a real tight fit. Put a little cutting oil in this and see if I can cut my own threads with a nut. Oh yeah, that's better already. Now I'm going to need to attach this nut on the end, so I'm just going to weld it on. But the thing is, I want to make sure I actually get this kind of straight. Now I bored out the hole to a ½ inch, so now I can put in a ½ inch bolt and hold that nut pretty well. That tube is somewhere around 5/8 diameter, so that's really sloppy. Remember that bushing I made for re-drilling my wheels? I'm going to slice off a bit of the 5/8 part, because that fits in there pretty nice. And put that on the bolt. That takes up the extra slack here. So now that nut is aligned and located. I notice the end of the shaft isn't straight. It does a little wobbling around. Looks like the high spot is right about there. Now I don't want to damage the threads while I straighten this. Some old electrical conduit can help with that. Now we slip the split tubing over the threads. And now we can squeeze it, and the slit allows the vise to compress the sleeve and lock it down good. I've got both ends of the thread protected, so now I can bend it and not worry about damaging it. I'm going to drop this in the nut that's in here, and this will start it driving through. The loose nut goes on here. Got enough sticking out here. Now that nut I attached on the end, after I got through the spider webs, it's going to go right here. And then this end, now that goes up here. And lock it in place. It rotates freely, but there's no slop at all. That's the one I welded on. Then the other one I'm going to use as a jam nut. That's pretty tight. It's about as tight as I'm going to get it. Now I got to disconnect the exhaust here. Oh, it moved. That's good. Then there's a little panel here we take off in order to let that fan come free. We're sliding the whole generator out now. That works pretty well. You can see the piece we removed is where that fan blade's going to slide. The exhaust coupler lets this come loose, and out comes the generator. Now I can get to the alternator and actually get a tight belt on here and fix that bolt that broke. But I noticed that's the magnetic field pushing it back into place. I just turned off all the battery disconnects. This is still doing the magnet thing. Let's sneak this little thing out of here. This right here is a first for me. I've got it completely disconnected. I know there's no power going to it. There is definitely a magnetic field in there. Learn something new every day. Now I gotta get that bolt out of there. Because it feels like a permanent magnet, I don't want chips going flying around and sticking inside. So I just covered the thing with tape. That's about as thin as I can make it, and it still doesn't want to come out. That was in there good. And that's what's left of the threads. When I realized this generator had low voltage, I traced the problem back. The low voltage was coming out of here, which is the power output, and the electricity is being generated here. So I knew somewhere between these two things in that box had to be the problem. So I popped the box open, and the first thing I saw was two loose screws in there. Those two screws hold in the voltage regulator. These two screws coming out were the cause of the problem. I got a replacement voltage regulator, and I'm going to install it, but not using these screws. Now that's where it attaches, and I see the problem immediately. Even with a stubby screwdriver, there's no way you can actually tighten that screw down. You need some kind of weird 90-degree angle drive. With a slotted screw, those type of things have a habit of falling out one side of the slot or another. So I bet these weren't torqued right. I bought the same kind of screw, but with a hex head and lock washers. We're going Loctite too. I do not want this thing to come loose again. We should be ready to go. "120 volts, the generator is good again." Looking how badly worn this belt is, there's quite a groove there. So I went ahead and popped the $7 for a new belt. Now I'm going crazy with maintenance here. Went and got a new fuel filter. Even has a little hologram on it. It's got to be good. Got fuel overflow. It might be below the tank level here, so this might need to be a fast one. Ooh, it's professional. I had a feeling I was going to get diesel all over me on this one. Oop. At least I don't have to worry about filling up the filter ahead of time. I crack this upper line so we get fuel seeping out. That way I know fuel is definitely filling the filter and I don't have a big air pocket. Alright, we got fuel coming out. So we'll tighten that back down. So now we should have a full system. New belt, new fuel filter. Let's warm this thing up. Apparently, I did not have all the air out of the system. It did purge itself, though, eventually. That's the rattle. AC's up and running, and it's blowing out cold. The generator is charging the 12-volt system also. Very slowly, but charging it. Check our voltage now. That is perfect. It's just what I'm looking for. Warm enough to drain the oil. Maybe I'm not changing the oil. Ah, wrench in the drain pan. Nice. At least I got the plug moving. Looks normal for diesel. We got fresh oil, fresh filter, fresh belt. All I have to do is scooch this back in and we should be all set. This abnormal level of routine maintenance is making me feel kind of weird. Might have to work on something else for a little bit. This brake line's probably at least 30 years old. There's lots of cracks in it. So I'm just going to reuse it. It should be fine. It's only brakes. It's not like they really matter. It's just wheel bearings. It's not like it's critical. I'll just slobber some grease in there. This feels so much better than doing it right. Exhaust is back on and we are done. Now this generator should be fine for years to come with no problems. But after the issue we had before, I want a backup system. And I want a way to run the air conditioner without running the generator. I want to run it off the engine. This bus has an inverter, but it's only 1500 watts. It's also a square wave type. We already have a power switch for the inverter. This will disconnect the 12 volt in, and that's off, so I know my wires aren't live. And this was the cheapest inverter I could find that looked like it would power that air conditioner. And it says it's pure sine wave. Hopefully that's not the brand name. The inverter came with wires for the power supply. I like these that are twice as thick, so we're going to stay with the original ones. Let's hit the power button here. Oh, yeah, things are happening. We got 12.5 volts going in, 119 going out. That looks good. Got the refrigerator on an extension cord. We're going to plug it in and see what happens. And the fridge is on. Apparently that draws 230 watts. Rather than use the outlets, I'm going to use these connectors on the side, run those to the box that originally was in here. That way I have power all over the whole bus. Now I'm mounting this on a carpeted surface. I want it a little bit above to leave an air gap. The instructions really didn't say anything at all one way or the other, but I figure an air gap won't hurt. So I'm using 1/4-28 spacers, and I found I need a stack of 3 to get it up off the carpet. Good thing they sell these in bulk. Now we're just to hook up these wires to the old box. We should be in good shape. The air conditioning is on. The roof air compressor is going, it's blasting. We're at under 1200 watts. It's down a little bit and lots of cold air blasting. This is what I was afraid of. That alternator could not keep up with that load. Now this bus has 2 alternators. That one down there does the engine and the cooling fans and all the actual driving stuff. I was looking at the charging system, and this right here caught my eye. That looks like this wire has gotten very hot, so I need to go bigger. Now this wire feeds those cooling fans, and they should draw 70 amps max. Apparently this wire is not big enough for 70 amps. Luckily, that inverter came with more wire, so I'm going to switch to one of these. Now the alternator also has a wire going to charge the battery, and that's this one, which that looks a little shaky, and that looks like a nut and bolt under electrical tape. And then it runs across the engine and goes to this area where it's wrapped in inner tube. So I'm going to do a little exploring here. We've got some spider webs, and oh hey, that's fancy. The terminal that I guess originally went to the battery going to this other cable, and then the charging system going through a fuse of some sort. Generally that looks totally fine. I just need to make a minor change here. This is that alternator wire that's coming apart. It looks like this section was just added on to add some length and jumpered onto a much nicer wire. So I'm just going to get rid of this part. Now before it ran across the engine to this junction, which looks like it's close to the battery, but it's not really. Because the battery goes here and then goes all the way up here to a disconnect switch and then back down to where that junction is. So for charging, it went from the alternator through a jumper wire, through a bolt, all the way across, through this fuse, through this junction, all the way up to the switch, all the way back down, and finally to the battery. I'm going to reinstall the inner tube on this junction. Feel free to comment if you see this being a potential problem, but it's worked so far. It's rubber. I don't see why it wouldn't keep working. Uncoiled the wires in that bag. Wasn't expecting one terminal to go to 2 wires, but it goes to 2, and then goes back to 1 terminal. And the length is just about right. New revised system. Got power from the alternator coming up and going to a junction which goes to the cooling fans that are the biggest draw on this entire system. Then we go over and go to the battery cutoff switch, and then from that straight down to the battery. Bigger wire, less connections. I think we'll be in better shape. This one right here is for the house batteries that does all the interior stuff. Now originally this bus came with standard GM style 10SI, 12SI alternators, and they burned up. My dad replaced them with these bigger 21SI type alternators. those did less burning up. The problem is, this is only 100 amps maximum output at speed. It's even less at idle. I gotta do something about that. I went looking to find a high output version of this 21 SI alternator, and I found something better. This is a 28 SI alternator. It's a more modern design, and by modern I mean compared to the stuff I'm working with. This is supposed to be a 200 amp output and 110 amps at idle with cooling fans on either end. So this should run cooler, put out more power, and hopefully do what I need to do to power that AC off the engine. This only cost me 120 bucks including shipping, and now that I took it out of the box, I might know why. It appears the entire end of the thread is mangled. The seller didn't mention that in the listing. There were more expensive ones, probably should be about $150 or so, but really not bad compared to the custom built alternators I was looking at with high outputs that were like in the hundreds and hundreds of dollars range. It has the two major qualifications for an upgrade. It's big and it's shiny, so it should be better. Now I'm working on the end of the shaft here, which basically looks like a mangled piece of metal rather than threads, mostly because it's a mangled piece of metal rather than threads. It looks like what happened is someone tried to put the nut on with an impact sideways, used the maximum level of Ugga Dugga, and just basically cross-threaded it and kept going. I can see threads here and there. I got the absolute thinnest blade I can on a rotary tool, and I'm going to go in there and try to carve away any excess metal and get down to any threads that are remaining. Now you definitely want eye protection for doing stuff like this, but now that I have bifocals, I can't see close up. So we're just going to assume I'm not going to get stuff in my eyes. Otherwise, I can't do this. You just basically try to get the blade to fall in the groove that was there. Sometimes the mangled bit's right on top, and it comes right off. I got the thread straightened out enough to get a nut on there, so let's try to install a pulley. Looks like it's going on there. And the hex on the end's kind of stripped out too. I guess it won't harm it any further to put an impact on it. I think it's on there. Everyone will tell you the first thing you do when you go to disconnect an alternator is disconnect your battery. But these batteries are a pain to disconnect, so I'm not doing that. Got a piece of tubing, gonna take the live wire and just shove the tubing right over the wire, so that way if it hits anything, it doesn't short out. This 28 SI should be a direct bolt in. I think it's called a long J frame, J180, something like that. It's supposed to bolt directly in. We'll see how true that is. Unbolted. Got a weird collection of spacers here. Huh. Including some brake line clamps. Odd. There's definitely JB Weld involved in this. Oh, there's another brake line clip. Interesting. If it's not exactly the same, it's very close. I've got a standard alternator shim assortment here. Basically an assortment of used washers for my half-inch drawer. I don't like this as a shim. If you hoard enough stuff, you get a wide variety of sizes. Oh, I think those two will do it. Use the half-inch hammer. There we go. This alternator is supposed to be a one-wire hookup. So all I have to do is hook up this power wire and I'm done. But I'm looking at this power wire. This alternator can put out twice the power of the old one. And I still have one more of those inverter cables left. So I think I'm going to use this wire instead because it's a lot thicker. While I'm talking about how much power this alternator produces, I want to make sure I point out this doesn't actually make energy, it converts energy. You take rotational energy from this belt and turn it into electrical energy going out a wire. And that's important because now that I'm putting out twice the power, it's going to be putting in twice the power. And I'm driving off one skinny little V-belt to this pulley. If I try to put out full power on this alternator, it's probably going to destroy that V-belt. But right now, all I have is a V-belt drive pulley. So this is what I'm stuck with. We're going to try it out, but I know that we'll eventually fail and need an upgrade. Found an old side post battery cable. Use that as a separate ground. Now I've got power going through 2 thick strands. I don't see any smoke, that's good. The alternator's running 14.4. Looks like we're in good shape. The big question, when I turn on this air conditioner, will it keep charging? Air conditioner on. Went briefly up to 1500 watts. Now we're hovering around, well, under 1200. That AC has been on for a while. We're hovering around 13 volts. So that alternator is just barely keeping up with the air conditioner at idle. I'm gonna try revving it up. That voltage is going right up. Yep, we're in good shape. So that right there is a big win. I can run the AC off the engine alone as we drive. I don't need to use the generator at all. The belt's warm. It's definitely warm. But it's not so warm that I can't touch it. It's not burning up yet. I will definitely need to upgrade this in the future, but right now it's good enough. And I got a spare belt inside. That leaves me with a loose heavy-duty power wire here in the engine compartment. But I got a use for that. I'm going to hook up a new toy. What I have here is a new toy that Nilight sent me that might solve a problem that's unique to really big vehicles like this bus. Let me show you what we went through before to hook up accessories to this bus. Start here at the battery box. And we're going. We're near the front. Now we need a switch on the dashboard. We'll put it somewhere in that steering wheel area. Go into the back. Let's say we wanted to hook up a cooling fan. Go to the back. Go to the radiator area. Let's put a bend in this wire right there. This is the bend I just made. Let me go to the other end of the wire. There I am. A lot of power is lost just in going through the wire. It's an 8-gang switch panel. It's got a remote control unit. Surprisingly heavy. That is over 10 ounces. That is one solidly built piece. Comes with a nice big circuit breaker. I think I took out the foam. There's all sorts of metal mounting brackets. It's steel too. Feels powder coated. Basically, it's a remote control relay box. And inside, there's a whole pile of solid state relays and fuses. In order to actually operate them, we have this remote control. And that is the on-off panel that goes through a long wire and actually controls all these relays. There's only 4 small, thin, signal level type wires going to this switch panel. But those 4 wires can control 8 different things. Now on this bus, you saw how long that length of run was for wire. In order to control 8 devices, I'd have to have 8 wires going up front, 8 switches, 8 wires coming back. That's 16 wires running the length of the bus. That's a lot of wire. With this, I'm going to run 4 wires the length of the bus and be able to control everything in the back. The ones closest to the power input are 30, then 20, then 10, then 5 amp. I just noticed in the cover, there's spare fuses too. Now on this side of the engine compartment is the original bus wiring. It's 70 years old. What do you expect? Hopefully not much of it is operational. I really don't know, but I'm going to ignore it completely. I'm going to take this relay box on their supplied bracket. Actually looks like there's 2 holes that might already fit it. And that'll be nice for access. The unit's bolted in. Now I need to hook it up. One thing I don't like, there's no actual indication on the unit itself which one of these is positive. That's kind of important. They do give a diagram. The schematic diagram is absolutely no help because it doesn't show anything inside the box. This picture does help because you can get an idea where the red's supposed to go. Time to mount the circuit breaker. In the past, I've complained about the screws and attaching hardware that Nilight supplies. They've been real gummy. I've destroyed them going into wood, never mind metal. But with this kit, they supplied self-drilling screws. Let's see how that goes. My confidence level is not high, but I'll try it. Huh, it worked. Let's try the next one. That hardware worked. My control unit's plugged in. Let's see what happens when we hit the power button. Nothing. These wires came with it. They're not on any of these schematics. There is nothing in those instructions that say where these wires hook up. But I'm going to take a guess. Because this has a 3-prong plug. And there is an area to plug in a 3-prong plug. And this kind of looks like a mini fuse adapter, where you shove it in a fuse box and it pulls power off it. So my guess is you're supposed to put this in a switch circuit, connect this wire to it, and use that to power up the box. That way when you shut off your car, it automatically powers down. This, on a 1953 bus, useless. I'm just hooking this straight to the power. We're gonna see what happens. This may be a learn from my mistakes moment, but those instructions do not help me at all. So we're gonna take a guess. Okay, now I'm just gonna hit this on any random live surface I have. This battery here. Now let's see what happens when I press the on button. Oh, it does stuff. Okay, apparently that was the trick. I'm turning on circuits. I probably powered up everything now. Now they said this had a sensor that changed the brightness whether it was light or dark. I just found it. Right there. They go dim, they go bright. Dim, bright. I put an amp meter in line. That is nothing. I'm powering up the box. We have 0.01 amps. Let's turn all this stuff on. 0.11 amps. 10, somewhere around there. Just operating that box takes around 0.1 amps, but 0.01 for it on standby. That's not a whole lot. I ran that switch power right to the input terminal, so this thing will be live all the time, drawing that 0.01 amps. But if I'm going to leave the bus for a while, I can just kick off the circuit breaker. But for now, I'll have whatever I want, whenever I want. Now I hooked up the backup lights to a 10 amp circuit. We press this one, we got backup lights. That's kind of neat. Now the next problem is the length of that cord. That doesn't get me to the end of the engine compartment. Never mind the front. That's one reason I eyed this system, because there are only 4 wires in this control cable. You know, this cable is really nice, good connectors, heat shrink tubing. Now I've got to take my nice fancy braided control cable that's heavy duty and snip it in half. Well, it doesn't want to snip. That outer covering is pretty good. Now when I redid the wiring, I disconnected a lot of things but left the wires in place. We got some here, some coiled up here, a few just terminated down there. And the other end of those wires, I coiled up here, just for something like this. Now I just got to figure out which ones go where. Luckily, I even labeled some of them. Fan, ooh, backup lights. I just undid that wire. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure none of them are live. So we just hit our test light on them all. I've got a couple that I think I know where they go. And I'm going to connect these two together. Bolted together. Let's go to the other end. So I'm going to put this test light on one of them, and the other one I'm going to hook straight to the battery. And the light goes on, which means the power is going from one wire up to my connection back to the other wire. So now I know for sure these are 2 wires I can use. This might be one of the black ones. Got a red one here. I finally sorted through the wiring, got a lot of splices. It's time to power this thing up and see what happens. I tucked all my splices under the cup holder here. Got my keypad mounted. Let's hope this powers up. It does. It works. Alright, turn on my backup lights. We're up and running. There is a pile of stickers that you can put on these switches. I only have one circuit hooked up, so I added the backup light one. You can see the light shines right through the sticker. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of them, so I'm not putting anything on them yet until I figure that out. Those will all do something eventually. Maybe the bus needs a locker. I don't think so. Ooh, welder. That's a possibility. They sent me some headlights. So we're going to pop these in, and hopefully I'll draw less electricity and have a little more light. Now with the original lights, we've got about 3 amps on low beam and a little under 5 amps on high beam. Low beam, 2.4 amps. High beam, about 3.1 amps. With a pair of them, we're going to go from about 9 amps down to about 6 amps. So save about 50% of the juice. And they look like they're a little bit brighter. I was hoping to just bolt them straight in. They don't fit. These buckets are meant for the wire being dead center in the housing. These are off to the side. The wire hits right here. Problem solved. Another issue, there's all these nice big heat sinks on this. They hit the housing too. You see the rub marks where, yeah, I still can't put them in. Looks like the clearance issue with this headlight is basically everything on the back. I'm thinking if I just leave this outer lip with the edges to keep the strength, cut out this whole dish in the bottom, it might fit. I kept going until the headlight bucket is more of a headlight ring. Fits perfect now. Lots of ventilation. You probably can't see me, but I need it to be dark because I'm going to demonstrate the headlights. First, let me turn on the old one. There is a puddle of light in front of us. Technically, it is illumination. Let me turn on one new one. There's the new one's beam. That's the puddle of light left over from the old one. That's a bit of a difference. That's low beam. That's high beam. I'm going to be able to see a lot better now. Now, a lot of people have commented on the brightness of LED lights on oncoming vehicles. It's not too bad until you hit high beam, but that's why you have low beam. Normally I don't like LED lights because they give it sort of a bug-eye look with all the different lenses and stuff. But with all the different windshields and mirrors and lights and other things, it kind of fits. These are way brighter than my old ones, but my old ones are really bad. The reflective coating is actually worn off. You can sort of see through them. So you won't see as dramatic of a difference if you had good lights and put LED ones in. I think it'd still be better, but for this bus, it's way better. These lights are glass, and that's pretty good for resisting scratches. Those lenses feel plastic. We'll see how they hold up. At least for now, it's good. You know, people from previous generations have a lot of good ideas. My parents came up with one. They gave me this bus, but they kept life use. So now, rather than me fixing it for them, I get to fix it for myself and pay for the insurance and the registration, and they get to use it whenever they want. That was very crafty. It also means I get to make some modifications that I want, like the ability to cook meat on fire. Now this bus is a storage compartment on the bottom here, and I'd use that to put a scooter in when I was comparing a scooter to an electric bike. The electric bike worked out great for this, so I don't need the scooter there anymore. So I've got a big open compartment to do something with. Now I already made a floor on this side, and it goes clear across to the other side. So that's good for storage. But this area here is completely useless, so I'm going to use it. Now I looked up portable kitchens online, and there are tons of things on drawer slides that you just bolt in, and they slide out, and they become a nice little kitchen right here. They look like they'd be ideal for the job. Problem is, they're expensive, and I don't do expensive. Also, for me, this area is a little bit low. I like it to be a little higher. Let's see if we can do something with stuff we have lying around that makes a kitchen in this area. Now I have something that might be useful over here in my good stuff pile. This right here, it's a sliding track system. When you have hoarding as a lifestyle choice, you end up with a lot of interesting things. These are seat tracks from an airplane. They have an Air Force control number on them. It looks like the seat was bolted to this piece, slid around. There's an access hole. Probably had a locking pin that locked in here. Something along those lines. We're going to be doing the usual, making this up as we go along. We'll see what happens. Now originally I was thinking of mounting the track in there at an angle and mounting a counter to here that slid in and out. But I'm wondering, what happens if I flip the whole thing over? Took this piece off here. We're going to repurpose it and somehow connect to that piece up there. This stuff is really handy, especially if you don't know the shape of what you're building yet. You can keep moving in different holes and try out different things. I don't know what this stuff actually costs. I just always collect it when people are getting rid of it. I haven't run out yet. Now I got my framework done on this side and braced up. I got a cross member, more framework on this side, going to another structural piece here. And now, I have one bolt in my guide roller and my plate is loose. I just need to lift that up into approximate position and then I'll figure out where that support goes. Apparently my front support's in the wrong spot. I run into the frame rail right here. That is why this material is handy. I'm just dropping down one hole and it should be good. Right there. That fits pretty decent. Something like that. I'll bend this so the angle matches. Luckily metal's so flexible. It was binding and dragging. I think one little shim might do it. That gives me some surface area. Decent height too. Now, I originally put this piece across just to support the end of this while I was putting together the structure that held it. But I kind of like this, because I'm worried the end of this might start flopping around while I drive. I'm going to trim it at an angle to make a ramp on this end. This much is still sticking out, so I use a precision measuring instrument and cut it somewhere around there. My guesstimate on length worked out. That's fully in. Now I need to figure out what size spacers I need to make this go level. But I finally have something that seems to work. Even added a handle so it pulls out easy. There's a bit of trial and error. These mounting legs are just held in with a screw. I used the screw holes for the feet with some flat washers to lock this down in place. I always pack this gas adapter inside and pack with paper towels so it doesn't rattle, and it never hurts to have extra paper towels. Never leave home without your towel, even if it's paper. Probably have to add some lube on that rail, but it works. I can call that project done. It's Friday the 13th, October 2023, and seems like it's a good time for a test drive, because tomorrow, a bit north of here, there's going to be an eclipse. We could take this and go see it. The sun's almost set, so this is the perfect time to start driving. Light check looks okay. Headlights are fantastic. This is way better than it's ever been. I can see stuff. There's low, there's high. Low and high. Those do really well. We made it to a fancy campground in Socorro, New Mexico. So we're going to stop here. We're not quite in that band of totality, but we're right close to it. We'll be there in no time tomorrow. It's morning now, made it a few miles. Then I realized I got to make an adjustment here. When I was fighting the cooling system originally, I turned off the heater up front. It's cold driving now. I got to open up that heater valve. This will be better. Drying the chili peppers while they haul it. That's just cool. I'm at the Walking Sands rest area just north of Socorro, south of Belen. It's kind of a neat one. If you ever happen to be this way, they've got these little cabins, like picnic table areas, all enclosed, no sun, some wind protection. It's kind of neat. And there's a neat bus out the window. Apparently you're not supposed to cook in here. They have quite a few of those little cabins here. Enough wandering around, time to get back on the road. Found a nice little parking spot, quiet area. It's a casino parking lot. Looks like they're having some kind of fair in the parking lot. But the key thing is, got my little sun filter here. We got an Eclipse starting. Got just a little bit there. Had some fresh fry bread. Kids had a little bouncy house time. And now let's see what the progress is. We have a perfect ring of fire, which doesn't show up well on the camera at all. This is a cool road.
So it's a back road, or something?
Well, back road to a back road. We're driving this back road to get to another back road. Awful lot of flat right about here. Found some time to do a little desert exploring. That's a national forest over there. I found some more interesting things to look at. We found a side road, off a side road, off a side road. And then we finally found a place to turn that thing around. So now we're headed back to the main road. The weather's real nice here, 70-ish degrees. The 7,000 foot altitude helps. But now we're going to get back on the road and head a little bit generally towards home. I don't know, home somewhere that way, I think. We'll follow the road we came in on. Oh look, traffic. There's an awful lot of straight road in front of us. I haven't got a chance to try my grill out yet, so we have to camp another night. I haven't looked at this since we left, so it's bounced around here for a few hundred miles. Let's hope it's still attached. So far, so good. I've got my propane and my propane accessories. Never actually tried this, but it looks like the propane bottle sits nicely on this arm here. So we're all set. Let's fire it up. Added some bratwurst along with the hot dogs and discovered that I really need lights on the outside of this bus. Right now, the GoPro light is the only thing giving us light. We're almost done cooking though. I'm gonna eat. We'll see you later. Food has done its job. Time to put this away. It's not pretty, but it sure works. All set. After a good night's sleep, it was time for another day. That's well worth the $10 camping fee. Just the view alone. Someone's going out fishing. I don't know if you can see, there's a boat headed out in the lake. First one I've seen this morning. We're gonna take a nice slow morning, walk down to the beach, maybe start rolling someday, eventually. We enjoyed the scenery, hiked a nature trail, got to the water, got some exercise, and just generally enjoyed being slightly west of nowhere. It's finally time to head home. Now my next challenge, I've got to turn this bus around. Not the most maneuverable thing in the world. There's a lot of places I wouldn't be able to take this camping, but where I can, it's great. This has been really fun. And we're back home. We just ran over an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours home with the AC blasting, running just off this alternator. Had my wife check the watt meter while we were driving. We were pulling 125 amps with that one little V-belt, and it worked fine. I can touch the belt. It's not overheated, doesn't look excessively worn. I see no actual issues. I still want to upgrade that someday, but it looks like it's not urgent. So now I got to unload and then finish this video and edit it, and that all should have been done yesterday, but we'll get around to it eventually. There's a reason my videos always come on at weird times. But the key thing is, we all had a lot of fun. Hope you're having fun too. We'll see you next time. I've been editing almost all day. Someday I'll actually finish, but I got distracted. Priorities. I wish we had smell-o-vision. Those smell good. Steak, cheese, and tortillas. Dinner's done. And flat fenders make a great table.